Hey, welcome to the Reloved Guitars workshop, and introducing Claire.
Hello.
And introducing Maurice, who's checking out a Stratocaster, Squier Standard series Stratocaster. And what do you think of it, Maurice? No, you prefer the Gibson, Chinese counterfeit Gibson? No, you're going away. You've had enough. Okay, okay. He finds his way out through all the junk. So, yes, we're straight into it, I guess. Welcome to this setup of another Squier Stratocaster Standard Series guitar, which has turned out to be the most popular and best-selling of the Reloved guitar types that we've sold so far. And it's quite easy to see why. There's something really good and usable about these guitars, and they're very interesting because they're great quality components and really great guitars to play. Often they come in really neglected condition, but they're very easy to get back into a really nice playing condition. But the interesting bit is that because people who maybe get given them by parents or whatever, because it's got the name Standard, the world falls into two halves. There's a bunch of people who know that a Squier Standard Stratocaster is quite a good guitar and second hand, probably costs upwards of 140 quid, and there are those who don't know that and will sell it on Gumtree or somewhere like that for 50 quid. So there's, strangely enough, there's quite a good supply of Gumtree style Squier Standard Strats, and if you are looking like I am a lot of the time, you can become tuned to spotting this headstock. It's, first of all, it's a big 70s style headstock, but it also has the Stratocaster written there in big block capitals, and then a little standard, tiny little standard thing that looks different from the Affinity model markings, for example. So often I can see these listed as an ignored and slightly down at heel looking starter guitar that some kid's grown out of, and the parents are selling it on, and you can pick this up for 50 quid. They're adding a bit of value with some of the work I do to them, and then selling them on. This one, I think, I got this one from a friend who I met on the Guitars and Keyboards podcast Facebook page, which is a great podcast, and go and check it out if you haven't heard of it. It's Guitars and Keyboard, or GAC, which is a music shop in Brighton. But four of the guys from that shop do a weekly sort of techno nerdy podcast, which is really entertaining, about an hour, hour and a half each time, just endlessly talking about pedals and guitars and amps. Funnily enough, never about keyboards, so it probably shouldn't be called Guitars and Keyboards. But anyway, great podcast, and on the Facebook page for that podcast, a bunch of people sort of get to know each other. And one of the people I came across or met online was a chap called Si, who lives not far away in Plymouth. And Si very kindly let me have this guitar at a reasonable price. So although he could have listed it for a bit more on eBay, I got it at a good price. I think he felt that it was going to a good old guitars home. And so here we have Si's much loved old Squier Stratocaster Standard Series, and it's in a really nice sparkly coal coloured, charcoal coloured, blacky grey thing, and they do really nice colour schemes on these things. And this has got a metallic sparkle, and yet it's got quite it's sort of a slightly silk or matte finish overall, and so is the pickguard. So you've got this sort of non-reflective, quite mean-looking guitar. Everything about this guitar is in pretty good nick, except it has some problems, and it has a crack down here in the lacquer, which extends from this screw down to this cavity here, and I bet you that is a split in the wood, okay, in this case. And equally, coming away from the corner of the tremolo block here is another crack. It has the hairline beginnings of a crack in the neck pocket on either side, but they're minuscule. And again, I don't think there's any structural issue to worry about. There's no movement in those cracks. But it's typical of guitar that's had a well-used life. There's a couple of little chips here and there. There's again another crack in the body here. A crack in the certainly in the lacquer, and it's probably in the wood as well. But you know, this is a well played guitar. Because of these issues, I don't think this is going to be a massively expensive Reloved guitar. The way I like to work it, and I make no secret of it, if I get the money back I paid for this guitar, plus my fee for doing the setup, and if I just add that up in my head right now, that would be price of yeah, I reckon I could sell this, put a price on this, a very good price of about 140. Now 140 is probably around about, it might be 140, 145, but that's the sort of price you would expect to pay if you saw someone else selling a Squier Standard Stratocaster online. But I'm able to, because thanks to Cy and other people, when I find it cheap, if I can get these guitars cheap, then I can sell this for the same price as somebody else is selling one. The only difference being this will have 3 hours of hard craftsmanship, making the neck play brilliantly and making the setup and the action and the intonation really spot on, and also the action of the tremolo will be spot on too. So getting a really bargain added value guitar for the same price as somebody else is knocking out a basic one. So that's. But it would be more if it wasn't for those cracks, and I'm obviously going to keep the price low because of those. Right, so enough sort of marketing sort of stuff out of the way. Let me plug this in, keep the charge going on this camera thing, and I'm just going to fire away and get this thing taken to pieces. I'm going to need a container for bits. I'm running out of containers. Right, I've got one down here that's got some pens in it. Can't afford a container with just some pens in it when we need to put real life guitar parts. This container previously had a Gibson Baldwin signature guitar parts in it, and that's done up, gone and sold, which is great. So this is going to be Squier Strat Standard. Right. So on this, nothing I need to do other than just get everything apart. I'm going to go from the ground up basically with this guitar. Interesting, as you slack it off, the tremolo gets tighter, all the notes go up in pitch, and that's because of course the springs at the back are pulling the thing down to the floor. So I'm just going to slack them all off. The tremolo will then rest on the flat against the body of the guitar, and then I'll go and cut the strings. So as we go through taking this apart, it gives me the chance to do the usual sort of evaluation of what we've got, and as I say, the only thing that strikes me being a problem on this guitar is the cracks, which we'll just be able to take a good look at. As to why some of these cracks happen, there's a good old dose of physics involved, I guess. You find that on these guitars, as with any guitar, the cracks tend to develop where there is pressure or stress, and sometimes a weak point as well. So let's get the back of this off. So for example, you often find where there's a small bridge of wood between two parts of the cavity, you'll often find a crack will spread across those quite easily. Sometimes it's not even that they're under stress, it's just because the piece of wood is a small bridge, and that the grain, if you like, follows the I don't know how to put it. if you follow the grain, sometimes it literally will, the wood will dry and it will split across the little bridge part. I'll show you. I'll probably be able to show you better when we've got the control, the pickup guard off. Right, so another set of strings hitting the rubbish bin, and what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to pull off the tremolo stuff. Now, interestingly, on this, just early on, took apart a Korean Squier. The Korean Squier, which I can now pull out the block, actually, but do a comparison. This is quite interesting. I don't want to lose any bits. So here we have the Fender Standard with its 2-point floating tremolo. It's got quite nice machined looking blocks. Feels good quality. Inside that you've got this cast metal, or I don't know if it's cast, but it's a low grade steel. It's kind of almost like an alloy rather than any quality steel. But you've got this thing which is the tremolo seat, and its idea is the strings go through there and sit underneath there, or the barrel of the string sits in there. But you notice that it's sort of chamfered or beveled or whatever, cut down, and it reduces the weight and solidity of it. And then by comparison, we've got this one from the Korean Squier, which is a much stronger, or much better quality grade of steel. It's a solid block, and it hasn't been cut down, so it has probably at least a third again of the weight. It's completely much heavier, much more solid and substantial. So it's quite a shame really to see I don't know, the cheapness of the more modern tremolo block, because the tremolo block is critical for the sustain that the guitar produces. Now straight away you can probably see, if you've got your beady eyes out, you can probably see immediately where the cracks are, and this is interesting. Straight away from the tremolo posts, the cracks have radiated down through, and they've literally gone through the wood here. So this little bridge of wood has cracked in both places, and that's partly because the tremolo is under load from the strings and from the springs the other side. So this, you can see actually first of all that the hole in which this actually it's moved slightly. Yeah, I'll show you here if you can see. This is split obviously, and the hole now looks a bit ragged, although it's still working, everything's working. But you can see that the design of this puts these post holes under a lot of strain, and because they're holes dug in a piece of wood without much clearance between that hole there and the hole here, there's hardly any strength and any pressure on it, which is levered by the strings and the tremolo springs. It's just putting this under constant load, and if the tremolo is used a lot, then you'll just get that breaking, which it's done. What you'll also find is that this guitar, if it comes under pressure or anything, will the wood or the lacquer, I don't really know which is which, but the splits will always come through a screw hole, and so you can see that each one of these screws, or 3 of the 6, have got little cracks, probably in this case lacquer cracks, radiating out from them. So it's really interesting how the stresses affect the wood, but we know for a fact that that's a definite crack in the wood. I can see the whole piece of wood moving, and because that's moved, so is this bit down here, and it's cracking because they've machined a little ledge, which again is necessary for the structure of the guitar, but it's too weak for the forces that this tremolo is under. So it's one of those things you're going to eventually, if it's played hard enough, it's going to give way under load, and that's what it's done. Interesting. So we're going to take all of these off, and under here I'm expecting to see this thin bridge of wood between this cavity here and the jack plug cavity. I'm expecting to see that wood split across there, And interestingly, there's no real heavy load going there. There is a pressure, there's a likely start point for a split in the screw that's gone in here. So that screw point can be the start of the crack. And that appears to be what's happened. Now, whether that's because the screw hole was incorrectly drilled to begin with, or whether somebody's screwed it up with too much force in the past, whatever, it's basically ended up with the wood splitting at a weak point, or certainly the lacquer, and it's probably the wood I'd expect. The issue here is that of course it won't go anywhere because it's well, actually it doesn't quite reach there. That's interesting. So it's a lacquer, certainly a lacquer crack right through the screw hole, centre of a screw hole. So I'm going to charge up the soldering iron so we can unhook these various bits and get this thing stripped off completely. We'll take the pickguard right off so we can clean everything independently, and it also gives us a chance to have a really good look under here. This is one of these guitars. Oh wow! This is a guitar where the pickguard goes right underneath, and again it's 2 points of attachment here. There's the tremolo attachment at the back and the jack plug. But what you can see here is cracks now, and this is the wood cracked right here. Again, it's not going to go anywhere. It's just the pressure of this neck sitting bolted in place has cracked the small bridge of wood. And once we take the neck off, you'll see how small that little pocket of wood under there is. And it's just, I don't know, it's just it's not great design, I suppose. But again, it's all in working order. I'm just going to make sure, I'm going to have a close look up with a bright light in a minute, make sure everything's in safe condition. But again, you know, this is a guitar that is not going to be sold as an immaculate guitar. It's been played hard and enjoyed. But I would say, you know, a design fault in the way that this has been structured. I mean, I don't have to kind of argue the point too much. You look at this piece of wood here, and you've put two great big, you drill two holes in which you're going to sink the feet, if you like, the upright posts for the tremolo block. And that, imagine building it if that was concrete and you sunk some foundations into there. The critical part about this is these have to be rock solid. Now the first thing I can see is that the hole around these inserts is slightly larger, which means you can see that years of use, when the tremolo has been under pressure, you can see that that's caused movement from side to side in those foundations. And the more the movements happen, the more the tremolo has been used, the more pressure it puts this piece of wood under. And by the time you look at this piece of wood with its lip under here, which means it's not even as thick, it's probably about that thick underneath there, and you've got a third of that thickness is taken up by a hole which has got bigger than the original hole. You've got a weakened structure, as simple as that, and that's cracked in both those places because the forces using the tremolo have overcome this piece of wood. So it's a shame. It's a really silly design, but nothing we can do about it. I mean, the purpose, I mean, the point, or the thing I'm interested in, of course, is just making sure that it plays and it's not likely to fall apart at any point. If it was, I guarantee you I wouldn't sell it. I'd use it for parts or something else. But it's a moody looking beastie, this one. It's a handsome guitar, and I think it will not only look nice but it will play nice. But you know, I just want to be absolutely clear about, well, this doesn't want to come out, so just to ease things along by cutting it there instead of faffing about, and then pull that through, and we'll put this off to one side for a minute. Nothing unusual about that. I'm going to take out we'll take off the neck now, if I can find the right piece. And as I take off the neck, the thing to always watch out for is to keep an eye if there are any shims under here. Go the right way. Yeah, we're on the lookout for any shims when we take the neck off, so that if there are any, we know exactly where they're placed, so that we can put it back together again with the shims in place. And that will guarantee that we get the same playing action, or the same geometry, if you like, when we put it all back together again. What I'm also going to do on this one is we'll take all the tuners off, because there's a few stickers and a bit of kind of residue, grubby residue on the headstock that I'd like to get rid of, and it's just easier to clean it up with the tuners off. But it also gives us a chance to make sure they're all in good nick. So there is a shim under here. Okay. In fact, there's two very lightly placed ones. So first thing is, we can tell something about this guitar. 10th of October, possibly 08, it's 0 something, 06 or 08, hard to say, but yeah, fairly standard looking thing. There's the shim in place there, it's just like a piece of sandpaper or something. There's another piece of tape there that's just been sprayed over, so it's not really acting as a shim, it's just a tape. With this shim, I'm going to glue it in place, roughly or almost identical position to where it was, just because I don't want to change the neck geometry or end up having moved it and put it in the wrong place. So a bit of super glue just to fix this in place, and just leave that set, and then we know that when we come back to reinstalling everything, providing that sets, which sometimes super glue doesn't want to do, without going all over your hands. It doesn't want to do it. Stay there. It's not very convincing way of doing it. Anyway, so what we've got is I was going to show you this. If you look down here, look how thin this gap of wood is. You're hoping that this is going to be intact, and all it takes is, if this neck is a very tight fit, all it takes is for one hit on that neck to put this under stress, and you can see that it's happened there, and it stresses at the point at which the energy can break through. And you know, there's no doubt about it, this is a wood crack, and it goes right the way through. In fact, it's got two sort of places. One is it cracks along there, and it somehow then transmits along there, and then it goes up the side here and then into that crack along the top. So same problem here, thin piece of wood under load, and the load here is coming from the tremolo, and the load here is coming from the neck, and that's the result, is that they break. Now the good news is this doesn't affect the neck at all. The neck it's not going to go backwards or forwards, it's bolted firmly into place. It just means this is always going to be broken, but it's covered up by the scratch plate, so it's not it's only kind of cosmetic, and we know that it's broken. This is different. There is a little bit of movement in this because it is properly broken through, and it's sticking out the side here. I might be tempted to squeeze some runny super glue into here and down into the side of this particular thing here, because both of these have been worn so much that they've got some play in them. Sorry, I've got the camera here, which is probably going to make all kinds of horrible noises in the microphone. I should be switching this off, apologies. I just want to get a sort of close-up look at these problem areas, just for information, or interest's sake. And then we've got scratches or single cracks that come off the screw holes there. This is the one, you know, that's come under so much pressure. It's the, you can really see in this picture I'm taking now that it's just not it's not stood up to the forces of using the tremolo, which is a real pity, because you know that's what it was designed to do theoretically. Right, so I'm going to put this off to one side for a minute. There's my neighbours. Just hoping, first of all, that the shim stays in place. I don't think super glue is the best bet for this. Right. So let's just hang this up. Cold nose in here. Let's just dangle it from here, I think. That'll do. Got quite a few things to be doing, so that should be alright. Let's leave it there. I know where the shim's supposed to be anyway. So just whizzing on, have a quick assessment of this neck. It's all looking so-so, but it's interesting. You can see when you get a good light on it, you can see there's gaps underneath these threads. They don't even sit, even on a proper machine or factory done neck. You often find that, you know, there's quite an amazing amount of space under the frets, which you'd really be surprised at. I mean, you can get your blade under there. Dink. Not that I'm going to, because I've already got one to refret. The issue for me is I don't mind if it's got gaps under here. What I'm really bothered about is just to make sure that they're not moving anywhere. As long as they're firmly in place, they can be pretty much any shape they like, as long as I can work on top of them and do a fret leveling. And in this case, unlike the other guitar I just did, which was working on the Korean Squier, which needed refretting, this one has got plenty enough material in the frets for us to resurface or level these and resurface them. So meanwhile, let's just get all the components off, as always. Again, string trees. Interestingly, that both those string trees are the same height, which is unusual because usually there's a difference between the front and the back one. Anyway, we'll just get everything stripped down and take it from there. So we know what we're dealing with in terms of the cracks, and it's, you know, for me it's more about checking them and being sure that there's nothing there that's going to affect the way the guitar plays. And most importantly, then being honest, frank with the customer about, or the buyer, prospective buyer, about what is there, what it looks like, and to what degree it has any effect on the way the guitar plays. The nut on here is okay. It's one of those Strat type of nuts that, sometimes these things don't want to come out. Yeah, it's one of those Strat style nuts that kind of looks higher at one end than the other. It makes you feel like you want to file it over, which of course you can do. What I'm also going to do anyway is to check I'll amend the slots on there, so we can file over the shape of that and alter it. Now this part of the shed needs a bit of work. I'm running out of space. There's my Squier Strat Standard bits and pieces. Just a quick look here. Here's the pickups, which are, I can feel the wax on them, so they've been waxed, which is good. I don't want to do anything to those. I don't think it needs anything doing. So I'm just going to put this off to one side. I played it the other day at Si's place in Plymouth, and it played fine. We'll blow out some of the switches and stuff. So really the next part of this is to go into the familiar old preparing this for fretwork, and that's a pretty drab, boring process if you've seen it before. So it's going to involve a combination of it's going to involve masking the fretboard off so that we only deal with the frets and we don't damage the nice rosewood underneath there. And we just sort of pile in with the masking tape, and leaving enough to pinch the extra bits around the back into sort of a tab, which makes it easier to get it off later. But also, any minute now, I'm going to need to cut different thicknesses of masking tape to do this. So that's where I get the old chopping board out and a straight edge and a blade, and spend a fair bit of time cutting the right size thickness pieces of tape. And it's really important to do it because there's no easy way of completely and carefully covering up this neck, this fingerboard, unless we do. And here's one I did earlier, which I'm not going to reuse, so I'm just going to pull all these bits off. But that's an example of how we do it. Hurrah. God. These pliers need, I know what they need. Do you know what they need? They need some super duper graphite. Oh, not that much graphite. Damn it. Come on. Work your way in there. It's not like putting oil in it exactly, is it? Apparently this is really good for freeing up locks, but this is not the same. It's sort of a bit rusted. Hard to handle. You you squeeze the thing and it goes everywhere. Hello, Maurice. Just lets himself in. Well done. So now you're also going to let all the warm air out, aren't you? Hello, my Morrissey friend. Hello. You look like you've had a haircut. Is that possible? Okay. Oh. How are you doing? Tell our friends in YouTube how things are. He saw his dad today. I don't think, of course he knew it was his dad, but his dad is this no-tailed, sticky nose, no-tailed black rogue. He lives in the neighbourhood. Oh, bless Maurice, look at him. Come on. And, yes, he's a bit of a rogue, and he's a bit of a ropey-looking character. And so Maurice doesn't know, obviously doesn't know who he is, but he was in the garden this morning, and while Maurice was out there, and I was doing that human thing of trying to get him to recognise his dad like it was the Jeremy Kyle show or something. And I was saying, don't you recognise your dad, look? And Maurice wasn't bothered. Apart from the fact they have a very close family resemblance. And no tail is the first bit. Oh, no. Love him, as they used to say in Wales. Right, so mind your paws. So the game here is working around the animal. Is he molting a bit? He's growing a very long fur on the back of his pom-pom here, which I kind of want to cut off and cut a bit short. But yeah, so all I'm going to do, if he'll let me, will you let me? can I put you on a nice, put you down on a nice stool next to the fire? That's where you want to be, next to the heater. Look, there, it's lovely and warm. Look, enjoy that. Stay there. There. Sit down. Sit down. Yeah. You don't want to move. Don't want to stand up here in the cold. Anyway, so I'm going to quickly seize my opportunity. I'm going to cut this tape very precisely, because it's important that the edges of the tape kind of meet the frets exactly, and otherwise they don't fully protect, and there's little gaps, and those gaps will show up later on when we're doing sanding or polishing the frets, the re-shaped or the re-leveled or the leveled frets, whatever. So getting the edges straight on the masking tape seems really sort of finicky, but it's quite important to do. And I've just got into a habit of doing it with a ruler and the cutting block. Mind out you. And the same process each time. I do 2 strips cut into thirds. Mind out you. 2 strips cut into thirds. Oh, you hear that? 2 strips cut into thirds and 2 strips cut in half is enough. And what it usually does is it leaves me a bit left over for eventualities, so that if any of it comes unhinged while I'm doing the sanding or the fret leveling, then I've got some standing by I can just quickly drop on of the right thinness, so I don't have to get the tape out and get the roll out and mess about. It's just one of those little details that over time you figure out, sort of time saving things. But having said that, this process, whichever way you do it, should probably take about an hour and a half, and there really isn't a quick way of doing it. And often I just fire into this without really stopping to explain on these videos why I'm doing it. That's one of the things of assuming that everybody knows. But the reason I'm doing this is every guitar that I've ever done, and that's about 80 now, every single guitar has uneven frets. Some as many as 90%, and a very few as 20-30%. The vast majority of that 100% of guitars that have uneven frets have 70 to 75%. That's the average. Uneven frets. So that's 3/4 of the frets on any guitar you care to chuck at me will have uneven frets. Now, that you might think, well, why does that matter? I mean, there's 2 questions really. One is how the hell is it like that? And the second one is, why does it matter? And I suppose the answer to the first one, why is it like that, is probably quite straightforward in that pressing frets into a wooden fingerboard isn't a precise science, and the way it's done is never going to get every single fret to sit at exactly the same height, even if the frets are exactly the same dimension physically. They're manufactured to the exact same spec. So the manufacturing, the installation process of frets is kind of steam powered a bit. You use some fret cool, which presses the fret in with or without some glue, and it presses it in as far as it will go, and some days it will go further on some bits of wood, and on some bits of the neck it might be a softer bit of wood and the thing goes in smoother or further or firmer or whatever, but it's never going to be millimetre or 1,000th of an inch precise. And the result is every guitar so far that I've come across, and therefore it's a fair guess to say every guitar, research has so far shown me every single guitar, new or second hand, other than the ones that have been done this way, has uneven frets. So why is it like that? Because the process is kind of quite crude. The next question was, why does it matter? And it only really matters insofar as the uneven frets will basically will get in the way of you playing. So that if you've got a very high fret, it'll stand up in the way of your string, and it'll cause a note to either play well in advance of where you're fretting it. So you fret one note and it will play something, a higher note, the note where the fret is popped up, or if it doesn't do that, it stands in the way of the string path, and it will cause a choking sound or buzzing on some of the notes you play. And that's because when you fret a string, the tolerance or the amount of space, let's imagine when you fret a string there, I'll try and show what I mean. If you're fretting a string, let's say this is the point where you're fretting a string there, and then the string comes off the fret towards the bridge, and it's exaggerated here, but then you can see there's a gap of a certain amount. Actually that gap is really tiny, it's minuscule, and you can imagine that a fret, say here, standing up in the way, unusually tall, will, when you fret this string, it'll bring the string down low enough so this fret touches it if it's really tall. And because the tolerances or the clearances down here are so small. Now what happens is that because all guitars have uneven frets, what happens to the action is that people set the action high enough to avoid any buzzes. The uneven frets are still there wherever they are, but your action set at the bridge is high enough to avoid encountering any problems. But the kind of the downside of that is that your playing action on most guitars, and certainly the ones coming out of the factory and sitting on the wall in shops, the playing action is not dictated by what somebody wants it to be or how somebody likes it. It's pretty much always dictated by the combined effect of the uneven frets in the neck. And you know, as I said, having proved to my own satisfaction that 100% of guitars, other than those that have been set up properly or have the work done, 100% of guitars by default have uneven frets, then it's incredibly common to find that the action is set to basically a high level, which will allow the guitar to play without buzzing. And then it goes out to the shop and off you go and buy it, and then you try and lower the action to something that you prefer, and then you hit buzzies and you get panicked and you hit all those Allen keys back the other way and go back to where it was. And then some people start cranking on the truss rod hoping that will make a difference, and then they start making it worse and they get more buzzes in different places, and then they get panicked and end up either jacking it in and selling it for another one, or they take it to a guitar shop and get charged a load of money for putting it right. And all of it is kind of from the inherent limitation of the process of squeezing metal frets into a piece of wood in the first place. So what are we doing here? Well, we are starting from the assumption, or the knowledge, that if every guitar has a lot of uneven frets on it, and if uneven frets restrict the possibilities for how you can set your action, and if you want a smooth, low-playing, easy-playing guitar with good intonation and a low action where all the notes sound good, then you would be advised, you might as well start by putting right the uneven frets. and we can do that. That's what we're doing now, but you can see it takes time, it takes effort, it takes some dedication, and the payoff is that you get on this guitar is you'll have refreshed, resurfaced, clean, lovely shiny frets, shine to a mirror finish, which will play beautifully, and along with that you'll have a set of even frets, which means we get a whole load of options in lowering the action to a sort of level that you want or that you enjoy playing, as opposed to one that you have to have in order not to get buzzes and duff notes on the fretboard. Okay, so that is why we do it. A bit of a long-winded thing, but it still amazes me. Well, maybe it doesn't, but it did amaze me to begin with that every guitar has these uneven frets and that nobody takes care of it. But then, you know, as long as it goes out the door and it plays, then you just accept, well, most people just accept that you can't lower the action beyond a certain point. Okay, so here we are getting ready to level the frets on this guitar. What am I going to do? Well, why am I going to level it? Well, I want them all even. So first of all, I'm going to check to satisfy my own curiosity about how many of these are uneven, and I will predict that it's about 60–70%. Could be wrong. I might one of these days find one that has none uneven, and that in fact it's already been done by somebody. So we're going to check it, see what proportion of frets are uneven. Then I'm going to level them. If it's a significant proportion of the frets are uneven, I'll level them. Then I'm going to reprofile the frets that I've leveled, because they'll have a sort of flat, sharp top on them, which will be no good for playing. So reprofiling them will reshape them into the original nice curved, smooth shape, and then I'll polish them as a final thing, all of which will take quite some time and effort. So the first thing in all of this is I'm going to make sure that the neck on this guitar is level, or flat, I should say, as flat as it can be. And people use rulers with slotted edges to accommodate the frets, and sometimes I just use my eyeball because I can see when it's level and when it isn't, and it has a slight little bit of relief in it, so I want to tighten that up. It's got a slight curve in it. I want to tighten it up and just take a little bit of that out, and make a tiny twist clockwise with the Allen key and see what it does. Might take a bit more actually. Often you get one side of the neck appears to be slightly different to the other. One side will appear almost dead flat, and there'll still be a little bit of concavity in the other side. It's quite normal, I'm finding, but actually that's about spot on, and I'm happy with that. Again, this isn't absolutely perfect. It's as good as we're going to get, given the vagary of this. Okay, so for this process I'm going to need my fret rocker, which is a tool that lets me determine how many frets are uneven. I'm going to need a marker pen, a pencil, fret leveling file, and another tool here, which is my fret crowning file. And I'm going to just start by using the fret rocker to try, and I put it across 3 frets at a time, and I just rock it backwards and forwards. And if I can rock it and hear a click, as I can here, it tells me that for that part of the fret, this is relatively high compared to one or other of those. Now, it's not an absolute. It could be that's clicking because this one's really low or that one's really low, but for the purposes of this job, we mark that one as being high and then move on to the next one. Now, when I go to level frets using this tool, which is a kind of an all-over fret leveling tool, it means we do all of the frets, some more than others, depending on which ones are high. But when we use a fret leveling tool that way, it doesn't really matter to know. It doesn't matter that we don't know whether this is high or that's low, causing the rocking. That only matters when we do them one at a time, and that way we have to be much more careful about working out which is which, because doing assuming one's high and doing that will then reveal that in fact it isn't high and it's the other one that's low, and so on and so on. So it gets a bit more complicated. But in this method, which I pretty much always use, because the percentage of frets uneven is always so high that there's no point just trying to do one or two, because there never are just one or two to do. With this method, I never need to know whether it's actually high or low. I just need to know I'm just doing this part for information, because the beauty about the fret leveling file is it will do its work without me rationalizing it or conceptualizing it. I don't have to think it through. It will just whiz on through, and by nature of the flat surface it will level everything simultaneously. Now this is surprising me that it's actually, I've passed over 2 frets, not found that many, so it's not too bad. I mean, it's not fantastic, but it's not the worst neck I've come across. No way. Shock horror. I am surprised. Stunned almost into silence. That's not a bad score so far. Not too bad. Often on when I'm doing this, I'll see one guitar might have 30% of the frets uneven. Another one might have the same number of frets, percentage of frets uneven, but the unevenness being much more severe. So it's not just the sheer number, it's the severity, and often I mark that with a heavier or lighter pencil. Again, that kind of information the fret leveling file doesn't need to know. It'll do its work regardless, but it's the kind of information that I find interesting to know. I kind of often wonder where I'm going to stop counting it and assume, or just take for granted, that there are no guitars that have no uneven frets from the factory. I do think there is. I do remember reading about one that does come without any uneven frets, and that's a Chapman stick. And there's a particular one that's the fretboard is manufactured out of aluminium, and it's absolutely scientifically levelled to incredible precision, and there's no bend and there's no give in it at all, and as a result they know the frets are absolutely spot on to the tiniest degree, which is quite amazing. Okay, so out of a 22, 1, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, we can only assess 20. Out of 20 we've got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That is a resounding 50%, which isn't bad at all. I'll just show you compared to some other things. Let's drop the power cable for a minute. So 50%, we look at the leaderboard of Shane, which has got a few things dangling off it now, but you can see that the vast majority are 50% and above, everything from there onwards. So we've got a Squier Strat Standard there at 55, we've got a Strat Standard at 35, and we've got another Standard, where's another one? Standard. We've got one there at 75, so there's no guarantee, but so far most of the Strat Standards have been in the lower end compared to many of the other guitars that we've seen through. Okay, so this is stage 1. Well, it's not stage, sorry, this is stage 0. This is the, just for my interest, finding out the state of this neck. Fret leveling now starts by marking all of these frets. I'm going to just go over the top with permanent marker, colour in the tops of each of these frets, and the purpose of the marker is to show us very quickly where we have and haven't been with the fret leveling file that we're going to use in a minute. And it's a very simple way of spotting not only where we've missed, but sometimes when we've done a pass with the fret you can still see chunks of black showing through, and that will tell you actually where there is a low spot, and that will often explain why other frets nearby appear high. So I'm just going to get straight into it. You can see I've got the file here. I'm going to start by running it down the edge to start the process, and you can hear that it's taking away material straight away. There's no quarter given. It's cutting from the very start, and I just basically run all the way down in stripes, moving my way towards the middle and then to the near side. And I'm going to stop at that point and brush off all the bits. It just gives me a chance to have a quick look. I don't expect any unusual problems here. I don't expect any great big low points either, so I'm on the lookout for any black spots where we haven't covered it, and actually pretty much every fret has been touched. So all I'm going to do is to even it out, make sure we've got it even. I'm just going to run down the edge a little bit, and I'm just going to go on and do a stripe all the way across lightly. There we go. That should be enough, and it's what I always refer to as a destructive process. I mean, it takes away material. What you'll find is where the unevenness or the height is greatest. Somebody's caught a mouse. Who's caught a mouse? Who's got the mouse? Can you hear it? There's a mouse in the hedge doing a lot of yelling. Can you hear it, Maurice? Take you for a little walk and see if you can hear this and see anything. Welcome to the world of Dartmoor. It's gone quiet now. Well, whatever that was, the moment has passed. But I wouldn't be surprised to see one of the cats jump over the hedge now, carrying the unfortunate mouse in his mouth. It's usually what happens. What do you say, Maurice? Not worth getting up for? Okay, I'll take your lead on it. Let's carry on with this. Right, so yeah, so we've got the leveling done. Always worth checking. Do a quick double check where you had marks, where you'd marked it up as uneven. Go back over. Almost certainly this will have cured it. Sometimes where the unevenness is really extreme, you might find a little bit more is required. But usually, especially on a neck where it's as mild as this one was, this should have done it all pretty much in one go. So there we have a levelled neck. All the frets are now level, courtesy of this beautiful flat file. Next part of this, second part now, is to reprofile. That means we again draw, marker pen over the top, and this time we're going over the top of the very flat and scratched surface of the fret. And this time the marker pen, the purpose of the marker pen is to help us reshape the fret, and that means removing the sort of edges of the flat spot and rounding it off, but doing so without going any lower and taking any of the height of the fret down, which we don't want to do since we've already just leveled it. And because we're using a concave tool for this, there's a concave shape in this tool. Because we're using this concave shape, when we use it, it'll take off the edges, but it won't take off the top. And as long as we leave a little thin strip of black marker pen on here, we'll know that we've rounded it, taken off the sharp edges, but we won't have touched the top of the fret, because that little bit of black marker pen tells us that we've not touched it. So I just basically need to go along the fret with this, and I immediately can see the sharp, like a tram lines starting to appear where it's cutting away the shoulder, if you like, of the fret, and then I stop when I've got a thin little black line of marker pen. Now this is doing it quite quickly, and it's doing it quickly because actually these frets were not that uneven. What you tend to find is where you've had to take more material away to even the frets up, this process takes a lot longer. Where you've started with fairly even frets, or relatively even frets, this can be quite quick. But again, the key bit to remember is that the little black line that you leave on top of the fret is the best indicator that you've maintained the level of the fret that you just had. And we pay attention to that all the way through now to make sure that we don't recreate any unevenness, given that we've put a lot of effort into levelling it out. No point wearing this fret down now and making it low in comparison to the one next to it, because we've then effectively created a high spot by virtue of the next fret being higher. So this tool is one that I got from StuMac in America, and really quality investment to do. It's about 70 quid or something, but it lasts hundreds and possibly thousands of uses. This one about £25 from Crimson Guitar in the UK. Again, great investment, both of them. There are lower tech ways of doing this. You can fret level. You can do your checking with a credit card with a couple of different sides cut into it. You can level the uneven frets you found with a little piece of 240 or 320 grit sandpaper, and a block like a fret rubber or a pencil razor as a block. So it doesn't have to be high tech. It's just one of these things that when you're doing a lot of it, then you kind of calculate that the amount of money you spend on a tool will pay itself back in terms of effort, but also in consistency of the job you do, so it becomes something you can achieve the same kind of results time and time again, which is what the tools really buy you. Now, the thing about this guitar is, of course, even though it's got some cracks in the body, we've explored those and we know where they are and what caused them. We're still treating this neck as if it was a prize custom guitar, because in a way the thing that's going to make the difference to playing this guitar, the experience of it, is the neck and the pickups, not the cracks in the body. They're important insofar as if they if there's any problem affecting the structure of the guitar, it's likely to break or directly interfere with its ability to produce sound, but it isn't in this case. So what we're really doing is making sure this neck is as good as it can be. And I do that. I apply the same kind of principle to a £30 guitar, or a guitar that's been rescued from a junk shop. If you pay quality attention to the neck and the frets, it's my experience that most of the time you will get a good playing guitar out of it, even if you've got severe problems with the rest of it. So for example, in the house I've got a K 1981 K guitar from the kind that you would have bought in Woolworths back in the day, and it's a horribly cheap guitar, nasty guitar in its day, and it's still a mess. Structurally it's plywood, really bad cheap plywood, but the neck is great and the frets are beautiful and it plays really well, and that's with the cheapest, nastiest tuners as well, which they could be better, they don't stay in tune fantastically well, but for what it is, without having spent any more money on it, it's playing brilliantly. Okay, so that was stage 2 of our 3-stage process. I'm going to go straight on to stage 3. There's no time like the present. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to find some more sandpaper because I'm going to need it. So if you think about where we're at, we currently have got a series of frets with some very, very deep scratching on them, and that scratching comes from this tool here, and it is really severe. I mean, for the purposes of explaining it, I call it call it zero grit. Right, it's as scratchy as you can get, and so all of those frets have got this scarring, if you like, on top of it, and we're going to polish that from that zero grit all the way down to a fine, maybe 12,000 grit in a series of steps. And the whole purpose of the steps is primarily one purpose, and that is to remove the scratches left by this tool here, and progressively replace them with finer and finer scratches until we're basically left polishing the frets. And then we'll end up on this case with, I found some good what's the word? I found some good polishing compound to use with the Dremel, so I'm going to use that this time. And I thought something beeped there. Yeah, so I'm going to have to end up with a final Dremel polish to bring these up to a mirror finish, but we're quite a way off that just yet. The critical thing in all of this polishing part is to make sure that we don't move on to a finer grade until we've removed every last trace of this. If we do, I've said this loads of times, if we move on before we've removed those scratches, what will happen is that they'll end up getting polished into the final frets, and you won't know it until you put the strings on and then try and bend a string, and you'll feel this kind of gritty feel, because it will be very hard to see them. So I'm going to use a combination of this paper and this magnifying glass to be absolutely certain that we've got those scratches out, and then I'll move on to the lighter gauge of paper, which is the 600, and then once that's done I'll go through a set of micromesh papers from 1500 to 12,000 as a last step, and then the Dremel pass over. So to begin with, there's a principle here, and that is I'm going to take material off these, but I don't want to introduce low spots. I want them all to be the same. So rule number 1 is to give them all about the same amount of attention, and that's quite, you have to concentrate and make sure that you don't stop and do any one spot much more than any other. The second thing is I use my fingers to begin with to press downwards, so that the paper is going as much as possible up and over the frets rather than across the top of them, because that will just kind of accentuate the flat spot. Okay, so I'm just going to dive straight in and get going. And you can see I'm sort of dragging and pressing down at the same time. What I do know is doing this, the end and the beginning frets always get the least attention. So you do have to spend a little bit more time on those. This is a mucky process as well, and you probably start to see that there's a lot of powder from the abrasive coming off. If you want to, you could be wearing a mask at this stage. I'm careful when it comes to this to make sure that I brush the dust off onto the floor. I don't mind treading it into the ground, I prefer it was down there. And I'm going to occasionally switch it all round and come back the other way. But again, still pressing downwards wherever possible to get as much of a reshaping of the frets as I can do. And then going until I've pretty much worn out the abrasive potential of each sheet. I'm going to do 2 of this grade to begin with, and then do a visual check. And it's my experience that usually I'll find some scratch marks that need still to be worked on after the second pass, and then I'll just take them off with the third piece of paper, and then be usually ready then to move on to the next lighter grade. Okay, so there's the first bit done. I'll just carry straight on. Again, this is definitely taking material off, there's no doubt about it, but it's broadly speaking taking the same amount off all the frets, because I'm giving them all the same amount of attention. And Maurice is just soaking up the heat from the radiator there, Mr. Lazy. Nearly there. It's very nice when you get down to the final the Dremel bit at the end. For quite a while I've not been using the Dremel because I hadn't really found anything that improved on the 12,000 grit paper that I use in the micromesh set. But Claire's got some stuff for her jewellery polishing which I tried out this morning, and actually made a nice final, really nice impression of final polish up, so it's worth giving that a go. Okay, so dusting off and just getting ready to have a visual check. This is where I look like sort of Clouseau. Really it's a matter of just getting a place where I can see comfortably through this magnifying glass. Sometimes I switch to the other glasses as well to do this, but I think this will do. The scratches I'm looking out for are the scratches left by the fret leveling file, which are running longitudinally along the neck, as are the other scratches from the 240 paper we've just been using. But if we find scratches from the fret leveling file, they stand out. They're like leftover scratches, which are bigger, a much bigger gauge than the ones we've just done. So they sort of look like little black pock holes or potholes or something. Now, so far, I think we've done a pretty good job on that. I can't see anything. Often it's down this end, towards the end, where the final few frets don't get quite the same coverage as the ones in the middle. So it's down here I'd expect to see any potholes left over, but I think this is pretty good. Brilliant. Brilliant. Done. So I'll just bin that paper and then we'll move on to the 600 grit. Now the nice thing about this now is that I don't have to worry about the visual inspection anymore. because I know that the big scratches now, the dangerous scratches that will mess up the action, are now gone. I can just concentrate on giving everything a good coverage of this 600 paper and be pretty confident that that will just take us one step forward to the micromesh. Maurice has gone to sleep, bless him. I think he's very used to me doing this now. I think he'd probably wake up when it comes to the Dremel. He's a kind of cat that doesn't mind the hoover as well. Sorry, the vacuum, which is quite sweet. I think you get a cat that's known it from birth and it just doesn't bother them at all. Right. So I've done all of this so far with just my fingertips. And again, my experience has been that tends to give a really smooth finish, because it's kind of, your fingers, you know, give with the material and sort of soften the whole thing up. So it's a nice, up to about this grade of paper, it's a really nice way of doing it, as long as your fingers don't hurt. Now at this stage, now I'm going to move to the micromesh papers. Actually, it's fair enough to use I use a block now, and it's one that I've cut, a foam block that I've cut to a bit of a point, and that way I can just go straight on to the 1500. And this time I'll just spend a little bit of extra time on it, because I'm jumping from 600 grit with the last paper to 1500. It's sort of quite a big jump down in size of particle, so probably needs a bit more time to eradicate all the 600 scratches with this. And then sometimes just move it around a bit, get a fresh bit. The micromesh papers are fabulous. They last such a long time, and they keep on doing this job time and time again. We're at the stage now that there's not really any risk of putting any unevenness into it. You'd have to work really hard with these papers now to to dig a hole in these frets, so that you'd end up with any kind of uneven spot. So we're in it's the home straight, I always call it. And then 2400. Few guitars to get out of the way at the moment. I've just made a decision that the red Stratocaster that I have indoors, which is a no-name Strat made by quote-unquote Aluthia, and I bought it through eBay, and it's built with predominantly Wilkinson hardware, gold Wilkinson hardware. And it's this sort of fire engine red, gold hardware, maple neck, with a fake fender decal on it, which is going to come off. But I was sort of thinking about doing it up and selling it, but having played it a bit this morning and having concluded that since I've had it, I haven't really had to tune it at all, and it stayed beautifully in tune and has been playable from the off without having done any work to it. I realised that actually, along with the fact that it's got Wilkinson, good quality Wilkinson single coil pickups, I think it's a really good candidate for keeping as a band guitar, or band practice and gigging guitar, which is, looks like I'll be playing some gigs in April or something. So, which means now I've got 3 kind of primary guitars, which is very luxurious, but that's, you know, one of the benefits of, or payoff of doing Reloved guitars. If you can't enjoy a selection of guitars if you're doing this kind of work, then what's the point? So yeah, I've got 3. One is the Antoria semi-acoustic, which has just got a lovely tone, lovely pickups, and it just feels big and heavy, and it's a good old-fashioned guitar. And then the second one is the Ibanez RG370, which kind of does everything I need, does it so accurately and precisely, and having it's alright, Maurice, I'm just doing a little bit of loading this up. Yeah, the Ibanez is such a beautiful, accurate instrument that I played for 3 hours the other day, and I didn't even need to adjust the microtuners once in that whole time, which is just unbelievable. And then the red Strat, I just think that covers every possible combination of sounds. So I'm kind of really pleased. Now I'm just going to do 2 or 3 at a time here, and this is the final polishing stage, and it's obviously a bit loud, but it's going to put a really nice shine on things. If you're going to use a Dremel like this, you've got to be incredibly careful that you don't ever hit the chuck against the frets. If you do, you'll be back to square one, basically, leveling, because a chuck gouge on this is just, you can't play over the top of it, it'll ruin your playing, and so you'll be literally back to square one, a waste of energy. So whenever you're doing frets with a Dremel, I heartily recommend you do what I'm doing, which is you hold the Dremel at an angle so that you don't run the risk of hitting this chuck part here onto the Dremel, onto the fretboard, because it will be curtains for your fret leveling. You'll be pretty depressed. Also, you've got to remember that with a Dremel, that the wheel wants to snatch the Dremel and pull it out off into another direction, so it's always just dying to whip off sideways and clang the chuck against the frets. And so what I'm doing is always doing 2 hands, always using 2 hands. It's quite slow, but it's highly satisfying when you get the paper off after this. But, I mean, these will be beautifully shiny, and you can see already, absolutely lovely. It's kind of hard to get this goo to stick on, and you have to dig quite hard. So the sound of the Dremel going, I know, is boring, sorry. You can fast forward these bits. It's just easier for me not to, because I don't have to fiddle around with the start-stop, sorry. So slow, but it's effective. I'm digging a hole here with this goo. Trying to do sort of 3 at a time here, but Maurice doesn't seem to be too bothered. Kind of woken him up a bit, but he's not gone running away or anything. A few more, Maurice. A few more. Goo. Nearly done. You can see how black this makes the surface, so I certainly wouldn't be able to do this part of it without masking the whole neck off the way we've done. So it's a really filthy process, this last stage, but it really adds a final shine to the frets, which is amazing. The Dremel's getting quite hot by this time, so it will be pleased to have a break any minute now. Let's get these final 3 done. Yay. Yay. Right. Done. Alright, Maurice? Yes. So now I'm going to pull off all the tape and hopefully that tabs at the back will help us do that. There you go. Quite simple. And the big payoff. So how long has this taken me? I don't know. I'd guess it's usually about an hour and a half, but whatever it is, it's this long to level, reprofile and polish a complete set of frets to give you beautiful refreshed playing surfaces and then also control over the action that you want to set when you bought a new guitar or even a second-hand one that's new to you. So, and you know, unless your guitar is really worn out and approaching the end of its natural days, then there's a surprising amount of material in the frets. You can resurface or dress or whatever you want to call it, level and refinish the frets a number of times before you run out of metal to do it. And you know, that's, as I've said quite a few times, that's usually, you'll find that with very old guitars. Often you can be at that point naturally, and just the one I was working on before this afternoon, just straight away made the decision to scrap the frets and refret it, because it would just have been a waste of time trying to work on frets that had reached the end of their natural life and had worn down so far there was no further material available. And if I had have done it, it would have just ended up with a fingerboard or frets that make the experience is that there's no gap between the frets and the fingerboard. You feel like you're how do you describe it? Yeah, you feel like your fingers are on the fingerboard the whole time, which in some ways you'd think they are, but actually when you watch how you play with decent quality frets, they're not. There's quite a big gap. You're not touching the fretboard at all, hardly. But when you run out of fret material, then the experience is that you're actually rubbing the fingerboard the whole time, because you are. So there is clearly a point at which you don't want to do that, and refretting is the only sensible option. Okay, so having created a load of muck in the process of leveling, reprofiling and polishing these frets, next thing I'm going to do is just bring this back up to as clean as it can be with naphtha, give the whole fingerboard a good clean, get rid of any of the leftover stuff, and just take any of the polishing compound that's left behind on these frets, take it off, clean all the dust off the front surface. And here I've got some sticky labels which I definitely want to get rid of. Some charity shop marker or something. Again, just the naphtha is really good at getting rid of that stuff. Just wets it up and then allows you to kind of scrape it off, and it takes away the remaining glue. Personally, I don't like any of this paperwork. There's probably some law that says you've got to leave the CE or whatever it is on there, but I hate all that sticker stuff, and including on the backs of the plates. You know, you've got the on the neck plate, you've got that sort of, often you've got that little dustbin icon. It's like, yeah, right. Little crappy stickers on the guitar, thank you. Okay, I am done with this baby. Neck is ready to hang for another day, possibly tomorrow, I should expect. But yeah, a beautiful reconditioned neck. Thanks to Sai for a nice priced guitar. But yeah, we got a lovely leveled and refinished standard Strat neck, which is going to set up beautifully well. The only thing we need to take care of is just make sure that there's nothing we can do. There's maybe put some glue into some of the cracks in the body parts there, and once we've done that, then put it all back together again. No alterations to the electrics. Everything's in good shape, and we'll just make sure that the jack plug socket and so on are good as we reconnect them. But this is the bulk of the hard work done. The next part, oh God, it's so shiny. The next part's really, where's my phone? That's the interesting bit. Don't tell me it's dropped off. Okay, I put it somewhere. How weird. Yeah, the next part will be setting it up and doing the intonation. So I have two things. I managed to find that, which I lost the other day. That's good. Now I've managed to lose my phone, which I've put down here somewhere and covered up with rags. Okay. And I'm going to take a photograph. That's what I went to do. I didn't just want to look at my phone. I want to take a picture of these amazing shiny frets. Get as much reflection on them as possible. Does that look good? Does that look good, I said? It looks great. Right. Okay, I'm going to call a halt to this, hang up the old Strat for the time being, put everything back on charge. Where can you fit? You can fit in here. So, quite a few things ready to go. I haven't cleaned this one. Also that thingy shim isn't really that strongly attached, but I will give this a clean over, and we'll squeeze some glue into those gaps there. We'll get the runniest super glue we can find. Meanwhile, I'm being really disciplined and putting away most, if not all of the tools I've been using. And we'll come back a bit later, take a break for now. So thank you for spending time with me in the Reloved guitar workshop. I hope it's been useful. Certainly, if this is your guitar that you've bought, I really hope it's given you some insight into what we've done with your guitar and why. And you can see the benefit, or you can, hopefully when you play it, you'll be able to see how that beautiful smooth action came about. It wasn't that way when it came out of the factory, I can assure you. It's taken hard work to get it there. But that's what I enjoy doing, so I hope you've enjoyed following me while I've been doing it. So I'll talk to you soon. Here we go. Right, we've done some initial gluing with very runny glue going into the cracks here, but that's not going to be enough. So just to feel a bit more confident, I'm going to want to put some tight bond into this, into these cracks as much as I can. Really, I just want to. Some of them are quite obvious, and I want to just fill this up with some solid, or what will become solid material when it sets. And as the adverts tell you, tight bond sets sort of harder than the surrounding wood, so this shouldn't be a problem. excuse me, where are we? Where were we? In fact, right, welcome back. Now is the time to set up and intonate this good-looking, moody-looking brute of a guitar, the Fender Squier, what do you call it, thing, Standard Stratocaster. And this is, as you've seen throughout the video so far, this is a kind of a really good-looking beast of a guitar, but as you know, it has some structural issues which devalue it a little bit, which is a pity. But the good news for you is if you're just looking for a playing guitar, this will be a really nice pile of Stratocaster with a great action and a really, really well looked after neck. Now I've had a go at it, with the tremolo arm locked down. So what I'm going to do here, from here on inwards, the job is to set the action on this guitar, bridge and nut and neck relief, and then to intonate it. So we put strings on yesterday, and one of the things is good to do as soon as you put strings on is to get the stretch out of the strings. And this is a really useful technique that somebody online showed me, and it's just a way of stretching the strings sideways rather than putting any stress over the bridge points or the nut point. So here you can get rid of a lot of the stretchiness, the built-in stretch. In fact, you only need to do this about twice all round to make the strings end up pretty much ready to go if you're gigging or you really can't afford to be retuning. And this was a chap called Gavin Downey, who's a Kiwi guitar tech who works for various bands and has obviously a lot of experience in getting guitars retuned between songs when they break strings or strings are worn out, whatever. So what I will do is, even though I've just done the first stretch, I'll find a note, and then I'll just give myself a quick tune up. Already it sounds quite nice. I only sort of casually set the action yesterday, didn't do anything to the nut slots at all. So, okay, so the first thing in setting the action, and I hope the camera's getting the light right on this, because it is a bit different from usual. The first thing I'm going to do with the action is I'm going to get myself the right Allen key. I've got a few that look the right size but aren't, so I've marked this one up with a bit of masking tape. And I'm going to check with a set if I can find the correct device, which is difficult to find because it always stands up vertically in the box. So with this, I'm going to just check the action. It might be good to get a bit of light thrown on it right now. Oh God, it's like daytime. So in millimeters, what I want is, here I have, this is 1.75 millimeters. It's quite low, but then we have a very high action over the first fret. This is astonishing, actually. I do want this a bit lower than this, so I'm going to start my action setting, or my fine tuning, by taking the bass string down to 1.5, and that's just a minor adjustment. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just put the thing on my shoulder, and I just do this by eye, and it's a much easier way than trying to follow a radius guide. You can do that if that's good for you, fine, but I'll do it by eye. I can see what the radius of the guitar is. I know it's a 12. I'm going to just make this duplicate it without getting all funny with the paperwork. Now I know that the two strings in the middle here are going to be the highest point in this whole arrangement, and you can sort of judge it by the amount of little grub screw sticking out the top, or you can do it by just a sense of where you see the line, and then you just make everything follow. Oh, hello, Maurice, of course. You make everything follow follow the line, the 12-inch curve, if you like, and then when you're done, you'll see that it's a reasonably good approximation of the curve there. Maurice is going to get it stuck in straight away, so let me just close the door so he doesn't lose all this nice warmth that we've built up. Hello, my friend, the star of Reloved guitars. Yes, the star of the logo. If you only knew, you have become an adornment, my friend, to the headstock. You were featuring. Now this is great for starters down this end. I'm looking down here and I can see the way that the curve goes. I'm not going to pay it too much attention at the moment, because what I can tell you is that the action down here is so high above the first fret. I'm going to make quite a difference to that, and when I do, this is going to change again. So I'm going to park that a little bit, and I'm going to do another check here, which is to see how do I feel about the neck relief on this guitar. And actually I think there is about enough neck relief in there. Sorry, Maurice, headbutt. Yeah, there's plenty of neck relief. You can, if Maurice would let you, you could check it by holding down the first and last fret and checking the amount of play between the string and the fret, somewhere in the middle between those 2 points. Or you could hold down the first and last fret and put a feeler gauge under there. But we can't really do either of those things with Maurice on the bench, can we? Hey? You're going to do purrs for the listeners. Come on. Psst, psst. Very sweet of you. Yeah. Right, he's probably a bit miffed because I've been drying lacquered guitar necks on his stool next to the radiator. So I'm going to move those off, give him his kingdom back. Go on then, here you are. Come on, back to where you want to be. There, lovely and warm. Subterfuge, we've got reclaimed the work surface. Okay, so like I said, the action is, broadly speaking, where I'd like it to be. I think I've used that phrase too many times in videos in the last day. I'm so sorry. I've got a bit broadly speaking mad. Now, what I'm definitely going to want to do, Maurice, what are you attacking? What I know that has to be done here is the gap, the action over the first fret has got to be adjusted, and the only way we're going to do that is by making adjustments to the slots in the thingy nut. And I can see straight away a bit of the slight downside on this is the nut on these guitars is a bit on the soft side. It's a sort of plasticky thing, which personally I find they can be really, really hard to work with. They take a lot of cutting. Now, normally on these guitars, I'm looking for a 0.3 gap over this first fret. That's a personal preference, but above 0.5, and what you find is that fretting strings down here will then go out of tune because you're having to press so hard to fret the note that it actually pushes the note sharp. Some people have said that can be cured by putting on thicker gauge strings. Go on, there you go. I can't remember what the logic behind that argument was, but I have to say it didn't really add up to me. So in my experience so far, what I found is that setting a 0.3 or 0.4 roughly action over the first fret, what it gives you is a really playable guitar. There's no problems at all, there's no notes, there's no buzzing of frets or anything. It will give you a really nice playing action, and it will feel effortless, so that you hardly have to put any effort into fretting chords or notes, and you don't get anything out of tune. So I reckon this is about 0.7 or more at the moment. So I'm going to combine two blades here, 0.5 and 0.25, and see if I'm vaguely right. Yep, there you go, 0.75. Just on 0.75. Not a bad guess, shows how nerdy I am. Okay, so it doesn't sound like much, but if I'm aiming for 0.3, and I have to say I've taken it as low as 0.25 before, and it's been perfectly good. If I'm aiming for 0.3, I can see that I've got loads of fresh air underneath that string. And that's where these expensive but very, very useful nut slot files come in handy. And we have a set that range from 0.09 through 11, 16, 24, 32, something, 32, 24, 32 and 42. And these correspond obviously to the gauge of strings I'm using here. So I'm setting this nut, I'm going to be setting this nut for a 9 gauge set of strings. So it's really simple. I'm going to have 2 bits of kit standing by. I don't know why, it's just a little force of habit for me. I'm going to have some of these ready, because I find these quite useful for cleaning out the slot, making it rounder, whereas the nut files actually sometimes leave quite a, I don't know how to describe it, less of a rounded bottom. But anyway, I could be making that up. So I've got my feeler gauge handy, because I need that for constantly checking, and then I'm going to just slack off this string. Well, actually I'm not going to do that. I'm going to slack the first 3 strings off. When I get to the higher strings, I don't want to be winding them backwards and forwards, on and off, so I'm going to try and do them under a basic tension. The reason I want to keep them under tension is because that guarantees that the string gets pulled down to the bottom of the slot when I've cut it, and it makes sure that we've got the right height. There's no point cutting a slot and then when you put the string under full tension you suddenly realise that it was snagging on the side, and now it's gone right the way down and it's hitting the fret. So the strings have to be under tension. Now I'm just going to slacken this off a little bit so I can move it side to side without too much trouble, but leaving enough tension so it will go firmly into the slot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work from the middle outwards again. So I'm starting with 24, which is my D string, and I'm going to put it back in place, and I'm going to measure, or going to check it against the 0.3. Now first of all, if it plays, the note plays, again this is let's take it out of the string tree to make this job easier. So if this note plays, then and I can see fresh air, then I've got some cutting down to do, and having moved it out of the string tree, it makes it easy for me to pull it off to one side. Now I'm going to cut the slot with a slight backward angle, and I'm just going to let the saw do the work and stop. And this is all about doing tiny amounts at a time. Still playing, a little bit more to do. And I just really want to be careful not to do anything too extreme. With a guitar like this, if you go too far on a white nut, you can do a temporary fix. I say temporary, it can be permanent, but you can do a fix with super glue and baking soda. I discovered not baking powder. It will work, but it's not quite the same, it's not as good. And super glue and baking soda together in the slot will fill the slot up and form a kind of hard cement, and that hard cement you can then recut and get the slot right. The best thing to do is not to run into that problem at all. So I'm going to use use these as well on these thicker strings, just to make sure that the slot is the right size. Okay, in fact, a little bit too big, so I'll leave it to this saw only on these. It's doing the job okay. Again, I can see by the shadow cast by this bright light that there's a gap, so I can keep on cutting down a little bit. You just have to be aware that every time you use the thing, it is cutting. That's pretty much as far as I want to go. Now when I get to that point, that string or that setting is almost ready to go. The last thing I want to do is just put it off to one side, and while I'm accessing it, I'm going to put a little bit of graphite into the slot. It doesn't matter if it spills everywhere, I can blow the excess away. And then put the string back in on top of that. Now if it's packed quite firmly, and it will raise it up a tiny fraction, but the graphite just works as a lubricant. Right, so basically that's our D string done. Plus the fact it has to go under a string tree, which has to be angled in the correct way. Got a little spider on the workbench. Come out to explore. Hello, my friend. You don't really want to be here. You want to be running away. So now I can move to the A, and I'll again put this under enough tension to make sure it sits in the right place. And of course the A is get the right nut file, or the slot file for the A. Can I just give myself enough slack to be able to put it in place? What I didn't do is I just blindly started cutting, is I didn't check the actual seating, which has plenty of room to go, so I can now blindly fire away. So it's a process of just a little cut, drop the thing back in, try a little bit more, cut a bit more, and always cutting backwards at a slight slant, because you want the playing length of the string to start at the front end of this, not at the back. If you cut the slot that way, you've added about 2 millimeters to the scale length of the string, which will affect the intonation of all these frets, and it would be difficult to get the intonation right. So the backwards tilt just ensures that the start point of the string is at the front of the nut. Again, plenty to go still. So it doesn't have to be a huge angle, just has to be enough. Moving the wrong string altogether. Sometimes it's good to just eyeball when they get the light where you want it. You can eyeball the string, and you can see by the position of the shadow that you've got things in the right place, or down to the right depth. So that one's okay, and I'm now going to drop in some graphite into that one as well, to just ease things, so you won't get any clicking when it's being tuned or when you're bending strings. So this E string now we know is quite high, so we're going to switch over to the largest file. I'm just going to check it again. I can see it's way above the others, so I can do some cutting. For what it's worth, the way I arrived at these heights wasn't through any manufacturer's specifications, because actually, to be honest, I don't really remember ever seeing much on the subject of any, certainly not of any consensus. The way I arrived at the heights that I cut here is actually a sort of trial and error process, but as a result of using a, what's the word I'm looking for, capo. And I was one of the earlier guitars that taught me a bit about all of this was my Taylor Baby, and it was a lovely guitar, fairly expensive, by no means a cheapie, not a budget guitar, and it sounded lovely, beautiful construction, everything looks lovely about it, but I just couldn't live with it, and I didn't really know why. and if you'd asked me at the time, and I tried to describe it in various online help forums and whatnot, tech forums, but the way I describe it would be that it just felt like it was constantly out of tune. I couldn't get it in tune, and yet I could tune the strings to a concert pitch, and yet as soon as I started playing, everything sounded wrong. Not just my crap playing, by the way. So those are those three. I'm just going to put some graphite in here. So to cut a very long and boring story short, I struggled. I just kept it, but I was tempted to sell it so many times over the next year or so, and I didn't really play it. I certainly didn't enjoy playing it. It felt like I'm just getting nowhere with it. And discovered I can't tune and talk. Yeah, so after kind of many fruitless months trying to find a solution, or at least some explanation of what it was that was the problem, I started just doing some, well, actually no, what I did is I noticed that when I played the Taylor Baby with a capo, I didn't have the same problem, and it seemed to be just a much better guitar all round, much more enjoyable, and it seemed to stay in tune, or felt like it was staying in tune. And so what happened is I ended up kind of playing it with a capo as much as possible, which is kind of not what it was meant to do. But hell, you know, I wasn't going to complain. If I got the guitar back that I wanted by playing it with a capo, then that's what I was going to do. And eventually I sort of started to just think it through and think, what's going on if it so improves so much when I put a capo on it, on the first fret, for example, then this has got to be telling me something. There's a secret in there. So basically, one day I kind of logicked it out, really. And so what I did was I put the capo on and you know, checked, yep, it's playing really nicely. I like this guitar. I like the way it plays. Everything seems to be in tune. And then I measured, once I'd put the capo on, I measured the gap between the new first fret and the string, and it was exactly, you know, as I said, about 0.3 of a millimetre. It was a really small amount, but there were no problems, and the guitar played beautifully, even with that very, very small amount. So then I took the capo off and I stepped back one fret, and I measured that gap between the first fret and the string, and you know, by comparison it was about a millimetre. So putting the capo on, it was down to 0.3, a third of the same. When I took it off, it was 3 times that height, and it was that height that was causing the problems, because once I took away that height and made a much smaller height, everything became easy to play, and it sounded great, and there were no intonation problems. So you can see it doesn't take a genius to work out that the nut is the problem in all of that. And so I started doing experiments with cutting the nut down to a much smaller, cutting the slots down to, and obviously I just aimed for 0.3 because that's what the capo gave me, and the capo produced a really lovely playable guitar, sort of made it play the way it should do. This is what, by the way, just going backwards, this is what I don't like about this material. It's because it's kind of rubber. It expands when you saw it, and then it closes back up. Unlike bone, you'll cut a slot and bone will just stay where it is. But this one, you feel like you've got to push it to the bottom of the slot you've cut, because it's not a distinct slot. It's kind of like a groove in some soft, plasticky, rubbery stuff. And when you're cutting these, you really feel like you're about to go through to the wood. Quite unsettling. So I'm going to stop that there. It's as low as I want to go with that, given this material. Anyway, yeah, so having tried, having kind of proved it to my own satisfaction, that indeed this the height was making the difference, and if I were to reduce the height, then suddenly I'd get a much better guitar out of it. And I had, at the time, I had one guitar that was being really difficult, and I'd done everything. I'd set up the guitar, I'd done all the intonation at the other end, you know, the full length string intonation, and everything about it was wonderful, except it had exactly that same problem, that it sounded constantly like you just couldn't tune it. And I was about to sell it. In fact, I might even have sold it on eBay, and I was in that sort of situation where I just thought, I cannot send this off. I'm not happy with this. This would be a really unpleasant playing experience, and that's not a way I want Reloved guitars to go. So it was. I kind of think I'd forgotten the Taylor Baby experience at that point, but that's when it sort of came back to me, and I can't remember exactly how I did it. It may have been, oh no, I actually did it with some string offcuts, can you believe? I actually had a set of old strings that I used to literally as a kind of makeshift file, and I used those string offcuts to cut down these slots. I did it first with a file, and then I did the final bit with a piece of string, an offcut of string of the right gauge. Anyway, the point is that I reset those slots to the correct height, and you know, kind of literally within minutes before the courier arrived to take it off to the customer, I tested it out, and I could see I had a really, really nice playing guitar, and it instantly cured it. And there was no, it's one of those moments where there's no kind of question, or is it a bit better? It was just instantly solved the problem, as if you know, it was there as an example just waiting to be had. So kind of triumph, I put it in the box and dispatched it. And from that point on, I've been doing a version of that all the time, and it continually proves to be correct. I think the nearest I've seen to a manufacturer's specification for, I can't remember which guitar it was now, but I think I saw some manufacturer's spec referring to a 0.5mm height. And you know, even if that were the case, personally I think that's into the territory of intonation problems. But even if it were the case and 0.5 was ideal, then I can tell you that almost no guitars that ever come through here have a nut action even as good as 0.5. They are always more, and sometimes all over the place and variable, but almost always more. So, you know, it just goes to show that such a tiny thing can make such a huge difference. And I was, to be honest, I was completely gobsmacked, really. I just couldn't believe, when I first found it and solved that problem I had, I just almost couldn't believe that such a tiny adjustment could transform the whole experience of playing that guitar. And it was you know, that's kind of, when you find something like that in life, it's one of those moments where you sort of dance around like a giddy nutcase, because you just cannot quite believe, you know, it's like you've discovered a secret that's almost too good to be true. But true it is, and continues to be, and I'm really pleased to say that I continue to be able to do it. You know, there are times when, if you're not careful, you can easily overdo it, and you know, sometimes that just spoils the whole thing, and it's a shame, because you can just take it a little bit too far, and I have done that on occasion, I don't mind admitting, but by and large I'm at the stage now where I can get it pretty much right every time. And this guitar is now at that stage, and I'll take a tuning again. In fact, I'll plug this in. Now that is playable, and because of the change in the action here now, it's lowered the action down here, which actually is almost too low. Much as I'm a fan of low actions, you would probably, I will in a moment, adjust this action up. Meantime, I'm just going to do the last stretch on these strings so that we've taken all the possible stretch out, because once we've tweak the action now again at the playing end, then we'll be on to the intonation, which will be the final bit of this guitar. Straight away it's sounding great, nothing wrong with the electrics or the basic structure of this guitar, but for you, the buyer, if that's you, or if you have a similar one, if that bridge of wood underneath there is damaged or compromised because of the stresses by the tremolo, then the best thing to do is to lock the tremolo down with the springs and just have it out of action. So it will be putting some backward pressure on those lugs, or those bushes I should call them, but it's not going backwards and forwards under mechanical manipulation. The one thing about pushing back the tremolo on this guitar to a kind of locked down position, or a fully flattened position as you can see it here, and it's not a major problem, but what it does is it tilts it all backwards. When the tremolo is up in normal playing position, it's usually tilted forward slightly, and that naturally increases the action height. But you can see here that because it's tilted back to lock position, to get the correct playing height, which actually I want to go a little higher than this now because it's almost too low on this guitar, to go back to a comfortable, good playing action. Actually, this is amazing. This has gone, because of the adjustment at the other end, this has now gone to 1 millimeter at the 1 millimeter at the 22nd fret, and yet it almost plays it, but it runs out on the high strings. But on most of them, it plays well. But now, when we come to make that adjustment, it's not a problem, but the only thing is we can make the adjustment here. I can get this action higher, but we are starting to run out of, certainly in the middle, we're about to run out of adjustment room, and I guess that's the downside of locking this tremolo in place. Apart from that, the only other way of doing it would be to allow it to come forward a little bit and lock it in place with a block of wood, so that tremolo isn't locked just by being back as it is here. But actually we will just about have enough room to do it. we don't actually have to raise it that much to clear any of those fret problems. And I'm just going to double check again now. We're at 1.6, and that's a little bit higher than I want, so I'm just going to wind it back a smidgen, and I'm going to shut the door so we don't lose all the heat. Thank you, Maurice, with your cold furry self. Your cold rain soaked furry self. You really want to be down here on this lovely warm cushion right next to the fire. Oh, doesn't that feel nice? Stay there, stay there, stay there. Okay, stay there, Maurice. No, he's going on the walk. So having put that somewhere where I want it, and did I check the height? The light's not so great at the moment for this, but it's 1.5, 1.6. That's quite, well, not quite, it's very decent. Now the next fret after that I can see is following the line pretty well. The only one that probably needs a little bit of adjustment now in reference or difference to maintaining the 12 radius curve across there is going to be, I think, a little bit of work on the top E. But actually I'm really happy with that. And just to prove my point, Maurice, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a shot down here, sort of as the punter sees it, or as the crow flies, or as the luthier sees it. I suppose to see what I'm seeing as I'm setting these things up, and just doing it by eye. Can I get it even lower than that? Maybe I can. I can, but I want it to take a picture of the end. Right. So that's quite worthwhile for reference purposes. Okay, so doing that, now I've got the action where I want it. I will have to go through and just double check we've got all the notes playing. I'll get another A out of the machine. Yes, Maurice, I love you, yes. Ooh, that nose is so wet and sticky. Oh yeah, deafened and flattened. Still the tuning's going. Maurice, why don't you go down and warm up on that lovely stool down by the fire? Yes. Come on. Come on, down here. Come on, down here. You know you want to be down here. That's where it's all at. Lovely and warm. Oh, yeah. Right, so, Maurice, sit down. Not quite sure what it is that takes him to sit down. Maybe it's a few seconds of being stroked on the stool. Yeah. He needs then to forget I'm here a bit. There, look at that lovely warm radiator for you. No, he's going to come back again. So I'm just, while I'm here, I'm just going to do this check for the amount of, there's quite a lot of relief in there. We could take a bit of that out actually. We don't need as much as that. Alright, so switch that back to a clean channel. I don't know why I'm playing through that odd thing there. not usually how I make it sound. Okay, I'll keep on stretching the strings as we speak. Maurice, you've got to go down. Come on, I can't do this intonation with you up there. Come on. Come on, go down. That's a good boy. At least he's obedient in that respect. Right, where was I? Oh yes, I was in the department of, we've got the nut right, we've got the action right down here. It's higher than I would normally have it, but what I do want to do is do a small adjustment to the relief. I want to take a tiny bit of relief out, so I'm going to do it clockwise, which means if I can get the key in properly. It's a bit difficult once you put the strings back on, but clockwise, and a little turn should pull out some of the relief. It will affect the tuning slightly. So the next thing I'm going to do is concentrate on the intonation, and that's the last stage. So I'm just going to clear the decks a little bit to give me the room to do this. Mostly at this point I don't need too much what's the word? I don't need too much bright light. I'm not doing things I need to look at. And I'm going to need to use a amplifier, which we've got running already, and I'm going to switch this phone into airplane ready, and then I'm going to bring up the tuner, and the tuner is going to be a vital part of the intonation process. So when we come to intonate a guitar, what it means is every guitar neck, manufactured guitar neck, is built with the frets that spaced in a particular set of intervals, and those intervals are defined by a formula which includes something called the scale length. The scale length is, I was talking about it a bit earlier, it's the free rotating length of string, so it's that bit between the front edge of the nut down here and the edge of the bridge saddle here. And you'd think that all guitars had one scale length. Well, they do, broadly speaking. So when somebody makes a guitar neck, they make all the frets come together at a certain rate, and to produce those, or to calculate those, the rate at which the frets get closer, you feed in a notional scale length, which I never remember what it is, but if it's 25.5 inches for a Strat, you feed that into your formula, and it says, right, build your neck this long and put the frets this far apart at these ever decreasing gaps. In reality, when you put that neck onto a guitar body, because of the nature of the strings, the thickness of the strings and the different materials, each string requires a slightly different actual length to tune it, if you like, to work precisely with these frets, because the frets are the things that are fixed. The string is the thing you can alter the length of, and what you do is you alter the length tiny bit of each, make a tiny alteration to the length of each string, so that that string is perfectly tuned for this neck and these particular frets. And when you've done that, what it does is it guarantees that your notes that you fret as you go up the fretboard are in tune all the way up. If you don't do it, if you don't intonate your guitar, the notes you play as you move further up the fretboard will get slightly out of tune, further out of tune. And there's a really simple way that we can find out if this is in tune, or sorry, if this is intonated properly, and that's to ping the 12th fret harmonic and tune it to an E in this case. As close as we can get. Talking doesn't help. And then if this string is the exact correct length for these frets, then what we'll find is that the fretted note on the 12th fret is the same as the pinged harmonic, because the harmonic is a halfway point on the scale length, independent of frets. It just is there. Okay. If the string is the right length, then we'll find that the 12th fret note is the right note, Actually, what I'm seeing, by the way, is that's a bit too close to the pickups. So I'm going to need to wind these in semi-darkness. And we're going to do that for the same for these as well. A little bit too. Yeah, a little bit too close to the strings. I want them to be too close. Okay. So let's go back to that one. So we're going to ping the E and fret it. It's not an exact science, so we may need to do it several times over until we can trust that it's right. Just check something a minute. Okay, I think that's nearly right. Okay, well, let's take that as given. I've already pre-positioned these, by the way, these bridge saddles, just from experience of knowing how they tend to fall in the pattern. But let's move on. Pretty close. That one's a bit flat. So when you do that and the string, the fretted string is flat, what it means is the string's actually too long. So we take a Phillips head, the correct Phillips head screwdriver, and we wind counterclockwise to shorten the length of the string by bringing the bridge saddle back in. It will change the tuning a little bit, which means we have to retune. Keep everything else quiet. It's hard to do. It's very close, but I'm going to take it a little bit more. Wrong piece. I'm going to do a little bit more just to get it as accurate as we can. Very, very near. Again, I've got room, so I can keep on doing it. Sometimes, trust what your tuner and the string is telling you, not what you think the pattern should do down here. All things being equal, it tends to follow a familiar pattern. But if something isn't equal, if the string is slightly different from another string, then you may find that it disrupts that pattern. And the tuner is the accurate thing. So it's still showing as flat, and we still need to shorten that string. So I'm going to do it quite a lot and see if we get any kind of noticeable response out of it. That's pretty much spot on. It's not where we'd expect it to be, but it's behaving correctly. In fact, if anything, it's just slightly sharp. So we can just give it a couple of turns back and stop there, I think. Go on to the next one. again that's flat, so it's too long, and again we'll bring that one forward, and I'll do it quite noticeably so we don't have to mess about with tiny fractions. The response there is quite quick. So we've gone sharp, noticeably sharp. So, you know, what's good is that by doing that we know it's actually doing what it's supposed to. Sometimes you can get caught up in this and it just feels like you're doing loads of tweaking but nothing's changing. So in that case, make quite a big change. I'll come back, that's now still too low, so I'll shorten it. One reason why this isn't scientific at all, that'll do me, is because it depends on how you fret the note, and I can show you I can fret one in different ways. So we can play this D, say that's pretty okay, or oh look, that's really sharp. That's because I'm pressing 100 times harder. So it's about, you know, unless you had a machine that put the same pressure on each time you did this, you probably could find a machine that did that. Close. See, that's significantly flat, so we're going to haul that forward a bit, shorten the string.